Hi everyone, welcome to the new video. So today in this video we are going to see the K6 performance testing tool, as you guys already know from the title. So I will be giving a short demonstration on the K6 performance testing tool, like how can we create some simple API test cases. Maybe we will be trying today get and post, and we will be executing the test, and we will generate some interactive reports what we can send over email. So let's get started. So K6 is a tool developed by Grafana Labs which will help you to do performance test. They are also developing one UI. I think it's called K6 Studio, but it's still like under development. Developers are building it. There are some bugs, probably they are fixing it. So as you can see, if you go to K6 documentation page, they will tell K6 Studio is in experimental stage, like that. So anyways, we will not be using the K6 Studio, but we will be writing our API test cases in JavaScript, and we will execute with the help of the K6 command line tool. Okay, so in our case, we will be using Windows subsystem for Linux. So we will be following all the steps, you know, um, which which are needed to install K6 tool on Linux only. So let's get started. With Windows also you can do. I'll provide the link of the documentation in the description so that you guys can go and check it out how to get it installed. But I guess the commands are same in order to execute the test, generate the report. So the installation step may differ based on the operating system you are using. Okay, so let's get a folder in desktop and we will call it K6 Learning. And let's open our favorite code editor, which is Visual Studio Code. Let me zoom in little bit. So for the installation, I already have the commands handy. I have copied everything in a notepad, and I'll be executing them one by one in order to install it. So let's open our terminal and let's switch our terminal to Ubuntu, which is Windows subsystem for Linux. So the first command is to that gpjk. Let's enter our password. Okay, I think it's done. Let's add the key server. Okay, now let's create that file, with the location where from where we can download our um, K6 repository or the installer. Let's give our app repository an update. Let me make it big. Okay, fine. And now let's execute our final command to install K6. Fine. So we have installed K6 on our terminal. Now let's write some test cases. So we will not be using any public application. So here in my computer, one API is already running. Let me show you. There are total two APIs. So first one is get. It's the endpoint is API/test, and host and port you can see. So if I click on send, it will show me one JSON with 200 response code that hello world. Another API we have, which is post. So there, if we enter any data, see ID 101, name John, and if we hit send, it will show me the data what I have entered, along with the message that data is created. Okay, so we are going to test our these two API, and then we will be generating the report. So first let's start with the get API testing. So we will call it get API testing .js. Let's write our scenario. So following the K6 documentation, first of all we have to import the HTTP from the K6 which we already installed. Then also we need to import check in order to check whether we are getting the proper response code or not. Okay, I have to write like this, and we will be importing this from k6 library. Now okay, first we will do everything in command line, then I'll we will move forward and I'll show you that how can we define the number of users and all. So let's export our default function. There we will have one URL, and that is our get URL. Okay, now let's check the response, which will be http.get URL, and then we will add check in the response where our status is 200. That message will be there, and r means our response, so r dot status, it should be equal to 200. Okay, so this is a simple script. Now if we want to execute the test with k6, what we are going to do, we can just simply write k6 run script.js. But while running the script, we have to define that how many users I should run, right? So we will use this flag VUS, which stands for virtual user. Let's run for 10 users, and we will run it for 30 seconds. Okay, now let's hit enter. Okay, all right, so I have written the name incorrect. Okay, so we have to write the name properly. So the script name is get API testing.js. Let's reduce the font size a bit, and let's execute. So now as you can see, for 10 user it has started hitting our API, and it will execute for 30-second duration. So here you can see 10 users and 30 second. Here the timer is there, and we can see the total time. Okay, so the status is 200. We are getting that for all requests we have received, and here we can see all the performance parameters. Okay, but these things are in command line. Okay, so if we want to export this report, suppose we want to send this report to someone, okay, how to do it? So for that, along with our command, in the initial stage, we will define two variables in caps. K6 web dashboard is equal to true, space K6 web dashboard export, and then after that we have to write the HTML file name. The report it will export in HTML. Those who are familiar with JMeter, so in JMeter we used to export our performance test reports in HTML format. So let's give it some name. Let's call it get API test result dot HTML, and again we will execute the test. So let's wait for 30 seconds. So here with the HTML name, I have not defined any other location, so it is going to create that HTML in the root directory where we already have our JavaScript code. Okay, so our test is executed properly, and we have our HTML report here. So we can copy the path. Let's go to browser and just hit it. So here as you can see, we have one interactive report with the graphs and all, and then the bottom we have the table with all the data. And there is a cool feature here. Like if you want to zoom in into a particular part, for example in this graph I want to zoom into that intersection, so I just can drag my mouse to build a square, and for that same time frame all the graphs will get updated. And if you want to switch back, just double click on the chart, it will go back to the normal state. Okay, and the benefit of no this HTML report is, whenever we are creating some HTML report and we are automating this for sending one email, so it is a bit easy if we have a single HTML file. In case of JMeter, we will get a HTML report folder inside which we will have our index.html along with some static contents and the other dependent JavaScript codes. So in case of K6 report, we do not have that thing. So directly, we can just read the content and pass through our mailer module, which will drop email to a number of recipients. And yeah, it's a cakewalk with this single HTML report. Okay, so we are done with the get test. Okay, now let's use the post test, like how to write a post request. So here, now in the post request we will not write anything in command line, instead number of user and everything we will be defining inside our code. For that, before our main function, we will export one constant called options. Okay, and there we can define that how many view users I need 30 view users. Okay, the duration I want again for 30 seconds. So if you can define S for seconds, M for minute. So here I want for 30 seconds. Now let's modify this function a bit. Instead of declaring everything inside, let's declare them here globally. So we will copy the endpoint. Sorry, I opened MongoDB. So we have this endpoint, and we will also need a payload because it's a post request. So we will define our payload here. Let's call this ID 1001, email shayan.sayhi@gmail.com, name Shayan Shah, and address is Agartala. Okay, so we have defined all our required variables. Let's add some headers. Well, in my case I don't need headers, but in case of the API you are testing, it needs any header, then you can add the header like this. So let's add some generic header only for our this test scenario, that is content type application/JSON. Now let's create our default function. Let's create a constant for storing our response, and we will call http.post. Okay, and we'll pass the URL, we'll pass the payload, we'll pass the params where we have our header. Now again we will use check. So response, so there we will add total 2 checks. First of all is status 201. This is a post request. So r dot status is 201. Another test we will add on the response time, that how much response time it is taking. So response times less than 2 millisecond, we will check whether we are getting response time less than 2 millisecond or not. So like that we can define r dot timings dot duration less than 200. Okay, now as we have multiple user, there will be some iterations, right? And I want to place a gap between the iteration. So for that what we can do, from the K6 module we can import another library called sleep, and we can add sleep 1, which will place 1 second sleep time. Okay, so in this case we have already added all the options like number of users and the duration, so we can directly execute without writing these things. Of course we have to change the script name. Okay, but here we will also generate an HTML report. So let's call it post API test report.html, and k6 run our file. Okay, so before doing that, because I will be giving you the code, so here as you can see I have written everything in the get API testing. So let's call it post. Okay, I'll share the get API code also. I'll share the repository link in the description where you will get everything. So the name is post API testing.js. So we have 30 user, 30 second, and we have defined our checks what we need. Now let's okay, I have to change another thing, which is the name of the file. I guess I have already changed it, but no problem. Let's change it again and we'll hit enter. So let's wait for the test to get completed. Okay, so our test got completed, our report got generated. Looks like we do not have any error. That means all our checks are passed for all the iterations. So let's open the post report. I guess it will look similar only. Yeah, so we have our you know all the graphs and the tables, everything what we need with all the parameters what is required. Yep, it's cool. So I guess once once the k6 will get stable, we can make more videos like how to handle the complex test scenarios. But I think for today's video it's absolutely fine. Like, we touched k6 for the first time. We learned like how can at least we configure the k6 environment and just do some check tests. Like, we we have done a small hands-on on k6. Okay, so let's connect again with some new content. So bye for now, and I'll be sharing, as I mentioned, I'll be sharing all the required links in the description. Thank you.